Hello, I'm Kevin Fernando, a GP working near Edinburgh in Scotland and content advisor for Medscape Global and UK. Welcome to our podcast, Medical Mentor, a bite-sized regular chat for all of us working in primary care. Podcasts will cover hot topics, practice pearls and hacks, as well as pitfalls to avoid, helping make our lives a little bit easier in primary care, but ultimately to help improve the lives of our patients. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about penicillin allergy in primary care, specifically the consequences of errantly coded penicillin allergies and what we can do to rectify this, focusing on the practice-changing PALACE randomized control trial published during 2023. I hope to convince you that an erroneously coded penicillin allergy is not a benign matter and has implications on both quality of life but also potentially quantity of life too. Let me start by setting the scene. It was during 1928 that Sir Alexander Fleming, a Scottish doctor I'm proud to say, discovered that penicillin fungus had accidentally contaminated a staphylococcal petri dish in his lab, and that this fungus had created a bacteria-free circle around itself. He named the active substance of this fungus penicillin, and the rest is history, as they say. In 1945, Fleming and his colleagues Ernest Boris Chain and Howard Florey were jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine for the discovery of penicillin and its curative effect in various infectious diseases. And there is no doubt that penicillin has helped save millions of lives globally over the subsequent decades. However, penicillin is also the most common drug allergy documented in medical records, with a prevalence ranging from 6 to 25% in the developed world. In the United Kingdom, it's estimated that 10% of the population have a reported penicillin allergy. However, less than 1 to 2% of these individuals are actually truly allergic to penicillin. Most penicillin allergies in adults relate to mild symptoms that occurred when they were children. Moreover, most individuals with a documented penicillin allergy had no immediate hypersensitivity reaction to penicillin. For example, urticaria, pruritus, or indeed angioedema or anaphylaxis within 1 to 6 hours of penicillin administration. Also, most individuals had no evidence of a severe cutaneous adverse reaction, such as Stevens Johnson syndrome. Instead, often a non immunological phenomenon, such as a viral rash, had been misinterpreted as an allergy, or a drug intolerance, such as a headache, had been miscoded as an allergy. Current UK guidance recommends if individuals give a history of a minor rash or a rash that occurs over 72 hours after administration of penicillin, then this is unlikely to be a penicillin allergy, and penicillin should not be withheld unnecessarily. The first case of penicillin anaphylaxis was actually reported in 1945, and a subsequent report from the World Health Organization in 1968 suggested that the rate of death from anaphylaxis was 0.002%. A review of 151 deaths secondary to penicillin use found that the onset of symptoms was within 15 minutes in most cases, and the majority of these individuals sadly died within 1 hour of administration of penicillin. Whilst this loss of life is tragic, hopefully we in primary care can take some reassurance that death from penicillin anaphylaxis is incredibly rare. Additionally, there is no suggestion that frequency of penicillin allergy has increased over the past 60 years, and it is well established that sensitivity to penicillin fades with time. So, what impact does an erroneously coded penicillin allergy have? Well, there is compelling evidence that suspected but unverified penicillin allergy leads to significantly more time in the hospital. For example, awaiting culture and sensitivity results for alternative antibiotics to penicillin, and individuals are exposed to the use of broader spectrum antibiotics, such as clindamycin, vancomycin, and fluoroquinolones, such as ciprofloxacin. These antibiotics have more adverse effects, including higher rates of Clostridioides difficile infection and the development of drug-resistant bacteria, such as methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, MRSA, and vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus, VRE. Moreover, increased hospital readmission rates and higher healthcare costs have also been observed in those with a penicillin allergy label. So you can see that a penicillin allergy label can worsen morbidity and potentially mortality, predominantly secondary to these multiple drug-resistant pathogens. Additionally, there's still belief among some healthcare professionals that using cephalosporins, for example cefalexin, in people with penicillin allergy results in an increased rate of adverse reactions, further driving usage of broad spectrum antibiotics. We can be reassured, though, that there's only around 10% cross reactivity with first and second generation cephalosporins, such as cefuroxime, and only around 2 to 3% cross reactivity with third generation cephalosporins, for example, cefotaxime. Now, given the emergence of multi drug resistant pathogens and the importance of antibiotic stewardship programs to preserve the effectiveness of antibiotics, we need strategies to reduce incorrectly labeled penicillin allergies in primary care. Current strategies, current standard of care, include skin prick testing, followed by clinically supervised oral provocation testing with penicillin. This is resource and time intensive and disparately available to us in primary care, which makes then for the perfect segue to the PALACE randomized control trial. So, the PALACE randomized control trial sought to determine whether a direct oral penicillin challenge was non-inferior to standard of care penicillin skin testing followed by an oral penicillin challenge in people with a low risk penicillin allergy. Now, risk of penicillin allergy was assessed using the PENFAST score. PENFAST is an internationally validated clinical decision tool that we can all use in primary care. The 5 components of PENFAST are: has a penicillin allergy been reported by the patient? If so, we can proceed with the decision tool. F for has 5 years or less elapsed since the penicillin reaction. A for the presence of anaphylaxis or angioedema alongside the penicillin reaction. S for a severe cutaneous adverse reaction with penicillin. For example, Stevens-Johnson syndrome or toxic epidermal necrolysis. And finally, T for was treatment required for the penicillin reaction. For example, treatment with steroids, antihistamines, or adrenaline. A PENFAST score of less than 3 indicates a low risk of a positive penicillin allergy test. There are many online calculators available to calculate the PENFAST score, such as Calculate by QXMD. So 382 adults were recruited to the PALACE randomized control trial, and they all had a PENFAST score of less than 3. In fact, most had a PENFAST score of 0 or 1. 187 individuals were randomized to a direct oral penicillin challenge, the intervention arm, and 190 individuals were randomized to standard of care penicillin skin testing, followed by an oral penicillin challenge, the control arm. So, what did they find? A positive immune mediated oral penicillin challenge occurred within 1 hour in 1 patient in the intervention arm and 1 patient in the control arm. So, no difference with either strategy. What about delayed adverse effects then? Well, there was no imbalance in total adverse events between both arms of the trial up to 5 days post intervention, post administration of penicillin. And importantly, no anaphylaxis or angioedema was observed in either arm of the trial, which is very reassuring for us in primary care. Subsequent to these PALLAS results, a label of penicillin allergy was removed from 186 of 187 patients in the intervention arm, the direct oral penicillin challenge arm, and 186 out of 190 patients in the control arm. Limitations of this study included only 5% of recruited individuals had a PENFAS score of 2, which limits generalizability of the PALLAS results, and also individuals with a history of anaphylaxis to any drug were excluded from this trial. So the authors concluded that a direct oral penicillin challenge in individuals with a low risk penicillin allergy was non-inferior to standard of care skin prick testing followed by an oral penicillin challenge, and was therefore indeed a safe procedure to facilitate the delabeling of penicillin allergies. The PALLAS RCT results are practice changing for us in primary care. The PALLAS RCT provides a scalable approach in a wide range of clinical settings to remove unverified penicillin allergy labels in a safe, fast, and economical manner. So, a call to action for us all in primary care. We need to rethink how we assess, document, and code new penicillin allergies. Remember, if individuals give a history of a minor rash or a rash that occurs over 72 hours after administration of penicillin, then this is unlikely to be a penicillin allergy and it should not be coded as such. Finally, we should all consider a direct oral penicillin challenge for those with a low risk, unverified penicillin allergy label, a PENFAS score of less than 3, which will help limit exposure to broader spectrum antibiotics, help reduce duration of inpatient stay, help reduce treatment costs, and most importantly, help reduce morbidity and mortality, improving both quality and quantity of life. So, thank you all for listening. I hope you found this podcast helpful. Please do listen to our future Medical Mentor podcast, which will be available on all major platforms. Follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Dr. Kevin Fernando, or email me on kfernando@webmd.net if you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future podcasts. Thank you again for listening.